What couldn't you believe you had to explain to another adult? My husband had to explain to a coworker that she couldn't take a train from the US to Europe. She insisted she had to because she didn't like flying. That women do not all have their period at the beginning of the month all around the world at the same time. Birthdays. I work in IT, and when we have new employees start, their default password is their birthday using the 2-digit month, day, and year format. I cannot tell you how many adults get confused about this. I often have to explain that January is 01, February is 02, etc. Just yesterday I had a 40-something start counting on her fingers trying to figure out what October was before typing in the wrong password 3 times. I finally just had to do it for her. This was not an isolated incident. I'd say it happens with at least a third of new employees, all adults. Africa is a continent and not a country. How a shower curtain works. I kept finding the bathroom floor absolutely soaked after my roommate showered. I gently asked her to make sure the shower curtain was fully closed. Keeps happening. Finally I figure out she's been drawing it closed with the bottom fully outside the tub. Okay. Sigh. So I draw her a diagram, showing how if you put the bottom of the curtain inside the tub, then the water routes back into the tub rather than on the floor. She was like, oh, you and your science. Then next time she comes out wrapped in a towel, which way does the curtain go again? We were both graduate students in science PhD programs. I was picking up Italian liras one time, 1999, pre-euros, from a bank in Tennessee. The teller brought me the envelope. When I opened it to count the money, she looked at me with total surprise and asked, do other countries have different money? A bank teller. I work in retail. Had just rang up a customer for a pair of shoes, total came to $97.19. He gave me a $100 bill, I gave him his change and receipt. His wife comes in later to return them, I give her the $97.19, she goes, no. My husband gave you a $100 bill, I want the 100 back, I said, he did, but his total was only $97.19, so I gave him change back. She persists, she wants her $100 back. I said, ma'am, your husband only paid $97.19, so that is what you get back when you return the item. This fucking woman. He gave you $100, I want the $100 back. This wasn't some sort of quick change scam, this woman was just dumb as a box of rocks. I told her, if you'd like to give me the $2.81 in change I gave him, I'd be happy to give you a $100 bill. She kept arguing with me for a minute, long enough for other people in line to speak up and tell her how stupid she was. LMAO eventually gave up and left with her $97.19. A girl was staying with my family and had brought her dog. The dog got hurt at one point, freak accident, that required surgery on a back leg and the cone of shame to be worn. At one point, she started cutting off a bit of the cone. Me, careful, cut too much, and he'll be able to reach his stitches. Her, that's all right. He'll be able to keep them clean. I had to explain to her, very slowly, that the purpose of the cone was to keep him from licking the stitches and pulling them out. She honestly thought the cone was just an aesthetic thing. I had to explain to my mom that my daughter was growing in my uterus and not my stomach, so the hot sauce on my burrito wasn't going to cause her skin burns. I also explained if she were growing in my stomach would certainly cause way worse burns than hot sauce. It was then that I understood why the school nurse had to explain to me in 5th grade why I kept bleeding through my pants every month at school, and not my mom. When I worked at a doctor's clinic, I had a lady on the phone wanting to book an appointment to have her flu shot. She specifically asked it to be a telephone appointment. I could not believe that I had to explain to her that we cannot inject her through the phone. That driving north meant the whole trip was uphill. I laughed at her until I realized she meant it, ended up laughing at myself cause there's no way I was going to explain it to her. Used to work at a daycare. One day a little mouse entered the premises and caused an uproar until we caught and released it in the playground. After the whole ordeal, one of my colleagues, who was the dumbest person I've ever met, said, "Let's hope it didn't lay eggs anywhere." I was too stunned to speak and just stared at her, while my room leader/friend said, in the most done with this shit way, mice don't lay eggs, name, and walked off. Why a room below sea level on a cruise ship would not have a balcony? That dogs are artificially bred, and that there aren't wild golden retrievers, wild chihuahuas, and wild Maltese just running about that we're catching to make into pets. It was at work. I had to explain that if they didn't do their job, me or the next shift had to. That the red brake lights in his rear view mirror aren't police. He hated driving at night for that reason. The difference between the number 0 and the letter O when giving them a temporary password so they could get back into their account. The only thing I could think of was, well, one is a letter and one is a number, and it still didn't click for them. North is not whichever way you're facing. I worked tech support for an internet provider a few years back. A woman calls in, complaining her Wi-Fi isn't working. Go through the normal troubleshooting questions: what's your device, how are you connected, and finally, what can you see on your screen? Crazy woman: CW, it's black. Me: how do you mean? Are you getting errors? CW: the whole screen is black. Me: have you turned the laptop on? CW: I can't. Me: why not? CW: I've lost the charging cable. Me: okay, do you have another device I can help you connect with? Maybe a tablet or your phone? CW: no, you need to get the laptop reconnected. Me: can you go and buy another charging cable? CW: no, you need to send me one. Me: we don't supply them, also we didn't supply you with your laptop, we just provide internet. CW: yes, and now you're not providing me internet, so you need to fix it. 40 minutes this went on, as my team around me stared in incoherent disbelief that this woman couldn't understand why her internet provider couldn't connect Wi-Fi to a computer with now power. I remember hanging up the phone and putting myself on break. My manager looked at me and told me to take a walk, while barely hiding her unrestrained giggles. That no matter how much you might want to put a camo pattern on your walls, you, not the paint, have to determine what that pattern looks like, and you will also have to purchase multiple cans of paint tinted differently because camo doesn't come out of a can that way. That each country does not, in fact, have its own sun. A Coinstar machine. I was working at a grocery store at the time and one was at the front of the store. Walking by, I saw a woman struggling and asked if she needed help. She said that she accidentally hit the Spanish instead of English button on the start screen. I started to walk her through the directions to use it: feed your coins into the hopper and it will count and sort them, and at the end take your receipt to customer service and get your cash. She was very annoyed with me at this point and exclaimed, "But I don't want Spanish money." Sigh. That New Zealand, the country we were both born, raised and living in, is not in Europe. Her reasoning is that when she fills out forms and has to tick a box for her ethnicity, she ticks New Zealand European. She thought that option was there because we are European and therefore in Europe. I had to explain to her that just means SHE is of European descent. That her ancestors lived in Europe. I also had to explain that not every New Zealander ticks that box. That there are other ethnicities here too. I had to explain to someone that just because their grandfather's brother married a Native American, that did not in any way make them part Native. Volunteered in a charity shop. Lady came to the counter with a top and asked if I could look in the back for one of the same color but a larger size. Tried to explain we don't do that because we're a charity shop. She insisted that other shops, like H&M, have done that for her. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Eventually I just went in the back for a few minutes, made a cup of tea for a coworker, and came out saying we don't have any. She got mad at that too. When you save a file on Windows, the save window actually lets you save the file into a particular folder. You don't have to go into your recent items to find it and then move it to where you want it to be saved. This person had been working an office job at a computer for more than 5 years at that point. A friend asked me how the sun knows the clocks have changed when we have daylight savings. I work in travel. I've had to explain time zones more than you'd believe. So, if you leave Sydney at 2 p.m. and fly 14 hours, crossing the international dateline, you arrive in LA at noon, about 2 hours before you left. Whales don't lay eggs. When I was in the military, we had a new airman who I had to counsel on why it is important to shower, wear deodorant, wash your clothes, etc. We didn't work in the field or on the flight line where it may have been more acceptable to be stinky. We worked in the medical group, in patient care, and patients were complaining about his foul odor. Backstory: apparently his mother took care of his laundry his whole life and would remind him to bathe. And since he was on his own now, he just hadn't really thought about it. I had to explain to my two coworkers that it wasn't some magic fairy that was throwing away their coffee cups. They were joking around one day that their old coffee cups always disappeared by the next day, and I had to tell them it was me and that I had to start doing it because they kept getting left in the way and being knocked over. I was off for a few days and came back and there were cups everywhere. That I could not steal a button from her Viber app. I work at the printing shop and old people often come and give me their phone to send stuff on email or Viber or WhatsApp and print them. So one day an old lady, 70, comes with her husband to print some documents. So I turn on the Wi-Fi, connect it and send the PDF document on Viber. I printed it and said bye. The next day she comes to my shop furious that I stole her direct photo send button on Viber. What happened? The app updated and the button is moved to another place. I explained it, but she couldn't believe me. She's convinced I stole the button and wants me to give it back. She was arguing with me for approximately half an hour until her husband asked her to drop it. She never came back. That an item damaged in a car crash did not qualify as a manufacturer defect covered under warranty. The store refund policy was 90 days, and she had a receipt over a year old. That raw meat juices, especially that of chicken, should in no way come in contact with other foods. I learned this in 8th grade home ec, so I was 13 years old. I had to explain to a 40-year-old that no, you can't put grilled chicken back on an unwashed cutting board that still has raw chicken juices. I had to explain to a restaurant worker that eggs are not dairy. Chickens do not have mammary glands. Someone who is allergic to dairy can eat eggs and chicken. Mayonnaise, containing eggs and oil, is therefore not dairy. She was looking at me like I was the stupid one, the whole time. How to make ramen. The directions are on the packet. I pointed that out. Their response was, I thought it was too simple to have directions on it. I had to explain to someone you can't buy like 2 pounds of lunch meat and eat it for a month. The concept of things spoiling was new to him. To be fair, we were both college students and he was living alone for the first time. I used to work at a coffee shop and had to explain what filling something halfway meant to a woman I was training. She didn't understand the concept of half. That bocconcini, Parmesan and feta are dairy cheeses. I used to work in a pizzeria and had to explain to this vegan couple on multiple occasions that these cheeses all were made from dairy. It got to the point I had to grab the original containers and read the ingredients on the third try to get it to sink in. I had to explain to 2 teenage girls, 15 and 16, that the reason the candle went out was because they put the glass lid back on its jar. One of them said that fire can only be put out with water. I explained that fire needs oxygen and putting the lid back on it cut the supply. When they didn't understand after explaining a few times, I had to explain it to them like toddlers. Fire is hungry, so it eats the air. When all the air is gone, it goes to sleep. Bye-bye fire. The double O was too much. P.S. The look on their mama's face was so funny. She turned to me, threw her hands up, and said, "I've failed." In the most defeated tone. That poor woman. Edit, I would like to point out that we did, in fact, have a serious talk to these girls about proper fire safety, and when to not use water on an open fire.